The United States has impeached 3 presidents in its history, but the first, Andrew Johnson, came closer to removal from office than any other. His impeachment trial in 1868 was the result of deep political divisions following the Civil War, as the country struggled to rebuild and redefine itself. But how did Johnson, who had been Abraham Lincoln's vice president, end up at the center of America's first presidential impeachment trial? And just how close did he come to being removed from office? Let's take a deep dive into one of the most dramatic moments in American political history. In April 1865, the Civil War came to an end, and just days later, President Abraham Lincoln was assassinated. Vice President Andrew Johnson, a Democrat from Tennessee, was suddenly thrust into the presidency. A Southerner who had remained loyal to the Union, Johnson had been chosen as Lincoln's running mate in 1864 as a symbol of unity. But once in office, it quickly became clear that Johnson's vision for Reconstruction was vastly different from that of the Republican-controlled Congress. Johnson believed in a lenient approach to bringing Southern states back into the Union, offering pardons to former Confederates and allowing them to quickly regain power. Radical Republicans in Congress, however, wanted a harsher approach, one that guaranteed rights and protections for newly freed African Americans. This fundamental disagreement set the stage for an explosive political battle. Congress, led by radical Republicans like Thaddeus Stevens and Charles Sumner, passed a series of Reconstruction acts aimed at protecting the rights of freedmen and limiting the influence of former Confederates. Johnson vetoed these measures, arguing they were unconstitutional and infringed on states' rights. In response, Congress overrode his vetoes, something that had never happened so frequently before in U.S. history. The breaking point came in 1867, with the passage of the Tenure of Office Act. This law, designed specifically to limit Johnson's power, prohibited the president from removing certain office holders without Senate approval. Johnson saw the law as unconstitutional and a direct challenge to his authority. He decided to test it by firing his Secretary of War, Edwin Stanton, a staunch ally of the radical Republicans. Johnson's dismissal of Stanton set off a firestorm. In February 1868, the House of Representatives voted to impeach him, charging him with violating the Tenure of Office Act and other alleged misconduct. The vote in the House was overwhelming, 126 in favor, 47 against. Johnson became the first U.S. president to be impeached. With impeachment approved, the case moved to the Senate for trial. If 2/3 of the Senate voted to convict, Johnson would be removed from office, something that had never happened before. The impeachment trial of Andrew Johnson began in March 1868, and the political stakes could not have been higher. Chief Justice Salmon P. Chase presided over the trial while senators acted as jurors. The prosecution, led by radical Republicans, argued that Johnson had defied the law and was unfit to lead. The defense countered that the Tenure of Office Act was unconstitutional and that Johnson had not committed any actual crimes. For weeks, the Senate chamber became the stage for a high-stakes political drama. Both sides made passionate arguments, but in the end, the trial's outcome hinged on a handful of moderate Republican senators who were uneasy about removing a president based on a law of questionable legality. On May 16, 1868, the Senate held its final vote. The result? Johnson was acquitted by a single vote. The Senate fell just short of the 2/3 majority needed for removal, with 35 senators voting guilty and 19 voting not guilty. It was a stunningly close call, and it forever shaped the future of presidential impeachment. The deciding vote came from Senator Edmund Ross of Kansas, who defied immense political pressure and voted to acquit Johnson. Ross later stated that he voted with his conscience, believing that removing a president over a political dispute would set a dangerous precedent. Although Johnson remained in office, his presidency was effectively crippled. He finished his term as a lame duck, unable to influence Reconstruction policies. In 1869, Ulysses S. Grant was elected president, and radical Reconstruction continued under his leadership. Johnson's impeachment left a lasting impact on American politics. It demonstrated the power of Congress to challenge the executive branch, but it also highlighted the difficulty of removing a sitting president. The Tenure of Office Act, the law at the center of the trial, was eventually repealed, and the Supreme Court later ruled that it had been unconstitutional. The impeachment of Andrew Johnson was a defining moment in American history. It was the first true test of the constitutional process of removing a president, and it underscored the deep divisions in post-Civil War America. Johnson survived his trial by the slimmest of margins, but the battle over Reconstruction continued. His story serves as a reminder of the fragile nature of political power and the challenges of uniting a deeply divided nation. So, what do you think? Did Johnson deserve impeachment, or was it purely a political maneuver? No matter where you stand, his trial set a precedent that still influences presidential impeachments today.